I just want normal's beer.
No, you don't. You want a lot more. What is this?
The new norm ain't the same as the old norm. Everything's changing and I don't know when.
So last week, who else was absolutely stunned when this new pilot for a show calling itself the first animated sitcom on X, meaning Twitter, dropped on the platform? Not because the pilot was a beacon of comedy being just under 4 minutes long, but because it was so bad and filled with absurd decisions, all crammed into a short little video that really shouldn't have ever seen the light of day. But also because it's a call out and because of money, and likely will be made into a full thing soon because yay. There's a lot of information going on in the background here, but I want to take this pilot and compare it to another just as unfunny semi-pilot that is essentially the left-wing version of this, so I get to talk about both sides and why this particular brand of comedy doesn't work, along with the non-political unfunny jokes. So nobody calls me biased, but also because it is interesting what does and doesn't work with these two shows. So let's get into this. I want to start with the new norm. But before I can, I really have to give you guys some background information about its creation from what I could find. This pilot was created by conservative comedian and commentator Dave Rubin. Now, full disclosure, I know next to nothing about his show The Rubin Report or really anything about him outside of some history I've seen in other videos. I don't watch his show, I don't want to watch his show, and at the same time, this pilot makes his views and I guess jokes pretty clear. All we need to know for the purpose of this video is that Rubin is by all accounts a failed comedian that fell into right-wing groups and ended up on right-wing platforms spouting the same identity politics they usually do.
Lesbians love Amstel. What is that? What is it? It tastes like water. Is there anything hotter than a lesbian spitting Amstel Light all over herself? This has become very uncomfortable. And you, I think you're gay. No, Mormon? You raised your hand. Does anyone need their genitals warmed up? That is our show. All right, did you guys have fun?
A lot of Koch brother funding, a lot of Blaze TV, Turning Point USA, and Daily Wire stuff to name a few. If you want my opinion on any of those things, I think they're all pretty much a waste of time and just serve as echo chambers for right-wing rhetoric that otherwise wouldn't be talked about in mainstream spaces, because that's kind of the point of them. Before all that, Rubin was a stand-up comedian for a few years before bouncing around jobs that eventually landed him on YouTube doing whatever his show is. He teamed up with Jordan Peterson a few times for a few appearances and then started working together with him on other shows. So you know that Rubin, despite being LGBT himself, he's gay and for same-sex marriage as some of his only left-wing ideals, is incredibly anti-trans, and very obviously does not understand most, if not all, of the trans topics he talks about or tries to joke about as seen in this pilot. He's not well known for being smart, is the point I'm trying to make here. A lot of people call him exceptionally dumb. Here's a clip I found where he was talking to Bob Saget, of all people, about taxes.
Basically, what I lay out in the book is pretty much everybody can pay 18%, but if you make under 50 grand, you get a free ride. I don't even think that's totally right, but I think that would be the way of helping the people.
You can barely live. You can barely live on that these days.
No, but you can keep as much of your money as possible. But otherwise, everyone pays 18%. And well, they would always say that the rich don't pay their share. The rich pay all the taxes. Poor people pay virtually no taxes, and rich people pay ton. Like,
just, what? I'm not a tax expert, and even I know that his take there is so far from reality, and why he was discussing it with Bob Saget is just beyond me. But anyway, that's not the point. Back to this show. So Rubin has a history of failed comedy, is a conservative commentator, and while gay, is also very anti-trans. So naturally, When all else fails, he decided to make an animated show and debut it on Twitter. Debut it on X, because Twitter has been getting more and more right-leaning thanks to the new CEO, who we will get into. Don't worry about that. Oh my god, there's a lot to talk about for just a 4-minute pilot. Anyone who's seen this thing knows about the ending. Getting into it, the new Norm pilot follows a disgruntled old conservative man named Norm sitting at home with his progressive daughter. He gets upset over a rainbow-colored beer can, and we discover that he is under house arrest for...
You're the one who threatened the school board.
I gently suggested
Yelled.
they stop brainwashing my daughter that girls aren't girls and men aren't men.
Sometimes they're neither, or both, or furry and dressed like dogs.
Ow!
Right away, you can see where this is going politically. The daughter has no name from what I can tell, despite everyone else having one, so that's fun. The pilot continues with who I assume to be Norm's wife Janice arriving and bringing an obviously LGBTQ+ character in named Chaz. You can tell that they're other because of the dyed hair, the mask, the contacts, and their first line being...
Actually, that is one of my pronouns. Also they, them, and me.
Chaz is interesting because they're voiced by Dave Rubin, I believe. There are no credits to this pilot, so I can't identify anyone else, but I'm pretty sure that is Rubin himself, which is very odd. The gay guy decided to play the only non-binary character that isn't the dog, because that reads well on paper. It's like he doesn't realize that makes him the butt of his own joke. You can't just make fun of yourself like that and not be funny with it. Come on. Oh right, there's a dog named Billy, by the way, who Chaz says that they're allergic to before being told that the dog is non-binary, and that suddenly erases their allergy? I guess that's the joke? You've probably noticed that the jokes here aren't really jokes at all, but instead just conservative talking points with the laugh track behind them. There's no real setup to any of these except for maybe one or two, but even then the payoff is incredibly weak and not very well thought out. We'll get into that a little later, too. Moving on, it is revealed that Chaz will be staying there to, quote, re-educate Norm to be more accepting, I guess? This is when Norm's best friend and boss, Charlie, arrives, surprising Chaz because apparently Norm can't be racist. He has a black friend and boss who's wearing the old racist logo for a racially named sports team that... Oh my god, what is this fucking pilot? Oh God, okay, I'm not opening up that can of worms of racism, whatever, but I love the idea that to show that the characters can't be racist, they bring in the token black character, but also have that token black character wearing a racial logo. Okay, there's no joke there. It's just wild and blatant virtue signaling. Like, come on, guys. There's no subtlety at all. It goes on with Norm offering Chaz a beer, who states he can't drink because he's under 21. So we have an adult giving alcohol to a minor. Cool. That's funny, I guess. This angers Charlie, whose son is allegedly transitioning to female, causing him to say,
Y'all influenced my boy to cut off his junk, but draw the line at beer?
Which is not how that works, for one, and is not a joke for two. It's also particularly odd that in this world it seems that trans people are just cropping up everywhere, even in the animals. That is a rather telling observation for conservative bits like this, though. It helps in fear-mongering to portray the world as full of whatever it is you don't understand or don't agree with, making it easier for those who share your views to sympathize. Not that this show is fear-mongering in any sense of the word. It could be argued that it is a form of satire, but I genuinely don't think Rubin could handle that with any sort of nuance. The intimidation from Charlie ends up scaring Chaz so much, he has to call up the officials running the government re-education program, which, okay, who are, oh God, caricatures of Assistant Health Secretary Dr. Rachel Levine and former Deputy Assistant Secretary for the Office of Nuclear Energy, Sam Brinton, along with some other official in a pup hood, only because they couldn't think of another immediately recognizable trans figure in the government. That's the only reason for their inclusion here, even considering that Brinton isn't in the government anymore. Also pup hoods because kink is ew, I guess? Rubin seems to equate pup hoods with furries here because that official barks for some reason, and the daughter mentions furries too, but it's just so lazily included that I have no real clue what he's trying to say here besides bringing in a reference to the fake story about school kids wanting litter boxes because they identify as cats and dogs, which isn't true, has never been true. It's just a talking point. I don't know why they would bother to include that here. It's not funny. Also, this angle on Chaz doesn't make any sense. They're calling from behind a couch. The view should be at the front door or the back of the couch, but here it looks like they're holding the phone up openly so everyone can see who they're calling. That's lazy. The pilot ends with Norm getting sprayed in the face with beer, one of the only setups there, and Charlie spouting,
You know there'll be jokes.
"Where, Charlie? Where?" I can't find a single joke in here that isn't just a conservative talking point and nothing else. On top of that, the ending song that plays here sounds suspiciously like an AI music cover. The words are weirdly blending into each other and don't really rhyme.
Make America funny again.
There are no credits I could find, so it very well might be AI. Who knows? Rubin does have experience using AI art, so it's at least somewhat likely. Guess we'll find out if the credits ever drop. Also, yeah, random Elon Musk shout out.
Thank God for Elon Musk and his shitpost memes. X is the home for free speech.
Oh god. I absolutely love how all pretext is dropped here to throw Elon Musk into the mix. It's such a blatant call out and dick riding session purely because Elon loves to hear his own name and to be inserted in everything, even when it has nothing to do with him. Cough. It's an obvious call out hoping for Elon to fund more episodes. And sadly, Elon usually falls for stuff like that, so I wouldn't be surprised if more Norm episodes come out through his funding. The pilot officially ends with Norm's wife Janice calling out that they're also going to Disney World, framed by a stock meme sound effect.
I almost forgot.
How Norm is supposed to go to Disney World while also under house arrest is confusing to say the least. Like, that just simply doesn't make sense, and why it's framed as a bad thing to go to an amusement park, but okay, woke Disney, boo. A lot of random bits in here just make no sense. Norm complains about wanting, quote, normal beer, but the only thing different about the beer that we know of is the rainbow can. Okay, the dog being non-binary somehow eliminates Chaz's allergies. Why? Other bits feature a blatant misunderstanding of reality in order to push the show's own misguided messages, like Charlie's outburst about his son being influenced to transition. A lot of conservative comedy has to lean on that in order to push the identity politics. It's not really comedy, it's just misinformation. Also, you probably noticed in the clips I posted the very, very weird laugh track going on in the background. That appears practically non-stop throughout this pilot, and that's by design, in two ways. The most blatant is that this is being advertised as the first, quote, sitcom published on Twitter/X, with sitcoms generally having live studio audiences or recorded canned laughter to accentuate jokes or dramatic moments. This practice has been generally phased out in current years, but it used to be everywhere. And the more subtle way is to try to force the audience to laugh with these tracks. When the jokes aren't obvious or are non-existent, a laugh track signals that where they were is obvious and that the audience should be laughing right here. I'll at least give Norm credit for trying something new and taking a risk with the laugh tracks, but it does not play out very well. That seems to be the first major complaint everyone has in the video comments as well, so that's fun. It just doesn't make sense to have that or even label Norm as a sitcom. You can see the quote audience during the end song when the camera pulls back, but there's no real point in the show being a sitcom unless it's to save money by having the set be a single room shot at only one angle. But then that's just lazy, and is also done plenty of other times in almost every other animated comedy like Family Guy or American Dad, just to say. It's just not good. And that's this pilot in a nutshell. It's not good. There are no real jokes here. The animation is stiff, the music is odd, the inclusion of Elon Musk is laughably terrible at best. Oh hey, I said laughable. I guess it did get a laugh out of me. And the messages are so obviously meant to solely focus on conservatives in the hope that they'll ignore all of the terrible decisions and the lack of jokes and support the show through anger and fear alone. This show is political grandstanding, and that's never funny. Punching down isn't comedy. It's just being mean. What this show does is put its characters on a pedestal. They're correct, everyone else is wrong. And the show isn't set up to challenge that notion in any way. So the jokes consist of these characters taking the moral high road and punching down. And I'm sorry, that's not funny. Again, it's just being mean. You can poke fun at people and satire stances all you want and maybe get some funny bits out of it, but once you're positioned as morally superior and the others are all wrong or conniving, it becomes something much, much darker and isn't funny at all. It focuses too much on owning the libs or angering the other side than anything else. And this is the case with a lot, and I mean a lot, of conservative comedians like Gutfeld or Dennis Miller. Even famed comedians like Dave Chappelle have fallen down that rabbit hole and haven't been able to climb back out. But I don't want to go over every single one, or otherwise we'll be here all day. Instead, I wanted to do something else. When I saw the new Norm pilot, it immediately reminded me of this awful, awful trailer for an unreleased show from back in 2015 called Gen Zed, which I can only describe as the antithesis to New Norm, as Gen Zed is a show about a trans stand-up comic and her three friends living together, or as the show puts it,
a train wreck, a troublemaker, a trans girl, and a trustafarian. And you thought the Breakfast Club was edgy.
Oh, that hurt. So let's get into the similarities and why this show also failed before it could even launch. Gen Zed was supposed to be a comedy published online by writer and producer Hayden Black. I genuinely cannot find much about him online, besides him having quite a few writing credits on several productions. Most notably, he wrote and directed an online low-budget comedy called Goodnight Burbank about a late-night news crew doing wacky stuff. I've never seen it, but it was bought out by Mark Cuban for a streaming show, but then it only produced what I believe to be 6 episodes. Weird, because it seemed like it was getting good reviews. Oh well, I guess that happens sometimes. But that led Black to start work on Gen Zed, which was to focus primarily on LGBT issues. The promo had a lot of lean on the lead character Shona being trans and being voiced by a genuine trans person, Julie Ray Goldstein, who thankfully has a ton more credits to her name nowadays. She was even in a couple of Critical Role episodes, so good for her. Unlike Norm, this promo has credits for everyone. Wonderful, even though the show itself has never seen the light of day. Allegedly, this is due to the animation studio never having enough time or money to work on the project. Also, weird note, but called out in the trailer itself, was a character voiced by Jane Weedland, who is a musical artist, I guess. Hell, she was a Hex girl. Damn. Okay, so maybe Gen Zed would have had some original music numbers. Who knows? From what I can find, Gen Zed was supposed to air in 2016, but couldn't get the proper animation with its studio working part-time, and most people saying after the promos released that the animation was flat and extremely poor. Which, yeah, sure, I can see that, especially nowadays when indie animation is overflowing the market. Look at how good the animation of Lackadaisy or Hell of a Boss or even the amazing Digital Circus is. Gen Zed wouldn't be able to hold a candle to any of those animation-wise. Apparently the animation was going to be updated to 3D models and then have the show release in 2020, but to this day it was never released and never even promoted outside of this promo and a Doritos ad for some reason. I don't think there's any 3D footage anywhere. That might be for the best because the promo we got, animation aside, is just really bad. The promo introduces us to Shona, a trans stand-up comic, Cameron, a black poet and gamer bro who is also described in the material as a loser, Huey, an overly aggressive macho psycho, and Betsy, an Asian trustafarian, also known as a hippie, all living together after becoming friends on an online game. I guess that's a decent enough premise until the show decided to put this out.
And it's the first animated show in the history of the world to feature a transgender actress in a lead role.
Whoa, you're trans?
You didn't know?
Being trans shows huge strength of mind. No pun intended, but it takes balls.
I'm thinking of replacing my balls with candy and turning the whole thing into a Pez dispenser.
Yikes. It ended up leaning heavy on the fact that it wanted to be the first show starring and voiced by a trans person, that it kind of lost the plot in its effort to be the first by being morally superior, and just like with Norm, it's not funny. In fact, there really isn't anything funny in this trailer at all. Huey punching Cameron in the dick isn't funny. Yelling about Bill Cosby drugging women isn't funny. The trailer, unlike the entirety of the Norm pilot, does have a couple of jokes that aren't political, but they're lame. Or worse yet, have no punchline. This bit using azalea puns.
These are my Iggy Azaleas, and these are my Azalea Banks. Let's not confuse them, okay?
Works, kind of, but ultimately falls flat because it's not very clever. And I love puns, but these things have the same names as these things isn't really a joke. It's an observation, sure, but it's not a joke. The other one with Cameron failing to do a haiku here.
It's a sacrifice, but I cannot live at home, so the answer is shit.
Has no punchline. There's a setup for maybe a funny haiku or something, but he just gives up and it ends with Shona and Huey looking at him confused. That's not a joke. It's all set up, no punchline. Is the punchline he couldn't finish the haiku? Or is it the other's reaction? I shouldn't be asking these questions. I should just know. Come on. Both Gen Zed and Norm suffer from similar issues while being separate and completely opposite. Norm revels in its hatred and misunderstanding of trans people and ideologies, while Gen Zed makes trans issues their entire topic. Each takes a morally superior high road and punches down instead of trying to poke fun of the various positions or making any sort of nuanced observations about the world. Both suffer extensively from self-aggrandizement, and both have minimal animation and poor editing decisions. I don't want to leave you guys with just that though. I'm not trying to say that some kind of comedy surrounding both of these issues isn't possible. It very, very much is. The focus just needs to shift. If Norm really wanted to focus on satirizing the current world, then it should have done something along the lines of, say, Stephen Colbert's show Our Cartoon President. How that handled satirizing the Trump White House. Now, why did Our Cartoon President succeed while Norm and Gen Zed failed? On the surface, it may seem like the same thing, cheap animation, political commentary disguised as jokes, weird voice acting, for example, but looking at the product as a whole, you discover that it is in fact true satire, for the most part. Our Cartoon President isn't a show where anyone takes the moral high ground. You're not supposed to like anyone in the show from both sides, Republicans and Democrats. They're all depicted as caricatures of themselves, meaning they're all exaggerated up to 11, and the comedy springs from that. Add in some slapstick, visual gags, genuinely funny writing, and some insanity that can only happen in cartoons, like a giant Hillary Clinton robot, and you have a decently funny show describing current events of the time through a cartoon lens that Gen Zed and Norm misunderstand completely. It's not a perfect show by any means. The animation is cheap, purely so they could focus on extremely current events like South Park does, and the voice acting is awful because it's satirizing the people. It's not meant to be taken seriously or cause a flame war. It's stupid and knows it's stupid and leans into that. Another example that I want to mention for a show that uses not only political and situational comedy while having some, albeit extremely slight left-right viewpoints, is the show Inside Job. Cancelled before its time and much more a character drama than a politically charged comedy show, it still did what all of these other shows tried and failed to do. It's funny, has actual heart, an engaging story, and doesn't talk down to its audience. If the characters take a moral high ground, they're usually immediately reprimanded or have their pedestal knocked out from under them. The point being that the kind of comedies that Gen Zed and Norm are trying to be can and do exist. These two so far failed projects only failed and are only failing because the focus is misguided. And the content is terrible, but the focus made the content. And the creators leaned way too heavily into their own ideals, believing that's what makes people latch on. And it's not. If the ideas themselves are flawed, the execution isn't going to be much better. You can have shows about disgruntled old people who don't accept the world is changing and want their quote norm to be established, but that character has to grow. They need to be able to expand their viewpoint. Character arcs are a thing that exist. We got that with F is for Family, but we're not getting that with Mr. Burcham. One has a decent and engaging story about a father who learns to love his family properly and deal with an ever-changing world, and the other has a father with an unchanging, morally superior position on life, with the show's premise meant to trigger the libs, and that's it. You could probably guess which is the more successful of the two. So at the end of the day, what do these failed shows accomplish? Honestly, nothing. They just eat up content and serve more as an interesting footnote or a cautionary story about how not to write comedy. And there are better shows out there that do deserve your attention and satisfy what these shows would otherwise attempt to do, sans political guidance. I really do implore you guys to check those out and give those little known or canceled shows before their time a chance, like Inside Job. Maybe we can get Inside Job Season 3. I guess the real Inside Job is how much money is being thrown around behind the scenes to pay for these train wreck pilots. Oh my god, someone make me a billionaire. I bet I could do better than this. What kind of shows do you guys want to see? I'll make one about dragons. Politically charged dragon tales. Who wants to see that? Oh god. Hey guys, this is the outro. I don't know what to talk about here. I didn't go to the movie, so I saw this and this has been bugging me and I wanted to make this thing. I don't know, it's probably trash. Don't even bother with these pilots, they're so bad. There's plenty more to watch. Go out there and do all that. I don't know, what do you guys think? In the comments below, what kind of political shows do you like that are funny or, I don't know, at least decent? I don't know, maybe I'll check them out eventually. I don't know, I don't usually watch these things. Anyway, after that, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss a video. And yeah, that's it. Have a great day, and if you're not, have a better one. See ya.
I'm just a ghost in your stereo. The fading memory of a shipwreck in the undertow. You're just a lost song on your own. And I'm just a ghost in your stereo.